I would say SWANA was holding an event before, and now we're going to hold an experience. And what does that look like for every facet of attendee, all different type of attendees? So soon we'll have those pieces and then the schedule and be ready to move forward.
This is Associations Thrive, the podcast celebrating successful associations and their leaders. I'm your host, Joanna Pineda, CEO and Chief Troublemaker at Matrix Group International. Listen in as top association executives tell all, revealing the creative and innovative ways they're increasing membership, generating revenue, nurturing engagement, and reimagining their organizations. By the way, if you've launched a new initiative, created new member services, or updated your governance structure and are seeing great results, I want to hear your story, and so do my listeners. I'd love to have you as a guest. Go to podcast.matrixgroup.net and apply to be on Associations Thrive. Now let's dive into this week's show. Today, I'm speaking with Amy Lestition Burke, CEO of the Solid Waste Association of North America, or SWANA. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about what I do and how much I love it.
Well, let's talk about SWANA. Tell us about the organization.
Yeah, so the Solid Waste Association of North America is committed to advancing from waste management to resource management. So simply, we are representing the waste and the recycling industry that affects all of us, residential, commercial. We all have products that we purchase, and then we need to figure out what we're going to do with them at the end of life. SWANA is composed of North America, so we do represent the United States, Canada, Caribbean, and actually also Guam. So it's fun geographic footprint, and it's also interesting to have representation from islands, because certainly that brings its own nuances in how to deal with waste and recycling when you're an island.
So, Amy, I live in the city of Alexandria, and the city picks up our trash, but I also see waste management trucks going around. So I think that's both city and private. So who are the members? Are they the people picking up the trash, the administrators? Give us a sense of the jobs and the companies and the industries.
Yeah, and I'm in Fairfax, and so I have a choice of who picks up my trash from many different private haulers. So it's different where you live. And that's another nuance within that. So our members, they're really like the managers, the directors, maybe the executive directors on the municipality side. So those supervisors over what we would call the operators of the front lines. So they are over those drivers. They're over those collectors. They're over on a landfill, the individuals there to collect the trash and running those compactors or what may be. Or on a recycling line, individuals are still needed to sort the recyclables. So to sort some of those paper from the plastics and from the cardboard. So it's usually that management that is over it.
I see.
So we want to provide education, resources, knowledge, advocacy, thinking of that realm. But then what can we give to them that goes down to the individuals that they're supervising? And that's really key. And then on the private side, it would be the same thing, right? Because they're managing the fleet, they're managing the collections and pulling that all together. And then how do you work together in a partnership?
Yeah.
Right? It's just like working with a website provider. How is that partnership formed? And so we want to make sure we're providing education so that they're working together, because they're representing the community and what the community needs and wants. You need to make sure that's all being delivered. There's lots there. So we have lots of tools in the toolbox: landfills, materials recycling facilities. So that is where the recyclable materials go to be sorted, to then be put into these massive bales and cubes to then go to be used in other products. There's also composting, organics, anaerobic digestion. In addition to that, there's also waste to energy facilities. So that is another example of our mission, right? To move waste to a resource. We're taking waste to make energy, to put electricity on the grid. So we are really thinking about it in all capacities. Waste can also be made into renewable natural gas. So again, there's many different facets for what that could be used for. It can be compressed and be put into vehicles. So then like collection, trash and recycling trucks could then run on compressed natural gas. So there's a lot of ranges here, and our members represent all of this capacity.
Well, we got a lot to talk about when it comes to SWANA, but before we do that, we got to talk about your journey because you've got an interesting background. How'd you get introduced to associations and how do you get to become CEO of SWANA?
It's been a great journey. I have been in associations, I would say, most of my career. I was going to get my master's and I needed to work full-time and get my master's full-time. And my friend actually was working at what used to be the Greater Washington Society of Association Executives. And she said, there's a position open. You're going to be able to do some homework because it was the receptionist position. And I said, great. So I came in and got to interview with the CEO at the time, Susan Sarfati, and was hired. And that started my career in associations. What could be better? And I was a sponge, soaking up every facet of associations I could, and they let me do that. And that's what was so wonderful. I said, I want to learn more about the event that we have here, and they let me shadow that. I said, I want to learn more about our advocacy and what we do, and I'm helping with the PAC and different things along those lines. So it was a great segue. And of course, GWSAE merged with ASAE. So I did a lot of work there. Following that, I spent 15 years at an association management company, MCI, and no day was ever boring. And I guess I would say that now as well, never a dull moment. And I worked with a plethora of organizations. I was executive director of a myriad of associations during that time. So really got to understand how to work with boards of directors, the financing, the budget. Many of the organizations were small that I was working with. So how can you do some of that glitz and glam and make a big splash on those shoestring budgets? And at MCI, I was also over the consulting practice. I also helped with the marketing of the association. I was an account executive. So a lot of roles there, which really has prepared me for where I am. In between that and the CEO of SWANA, I was at the Consumer Brands Association.
Where I met you.
Yes, where we met and we were working together. Yeah. And I got to see the trade side. And to see that, especially coming out of the pandemic and all of the concerns with the supply chains related to food and beverage, household products, personal care, really learned a lot. And one of their goals at the Consumer Brands Association was packaging sustainability. So even though they represented a wide variety of products that we would buy in the grocery store, the one thing that united them was the packaging. They need to package those products together. And so how do you do that? We wanted companies to do that as sustainably as possible. So I learned a lot about the beginning of life of consumer packaged goods and that side and that angle. So that prepared me to come into this role as CEO.
Of course.
So I feel like it's the full circle. I've got a great understanding of manufacturers, how they're thinking, what they're thinking on the packaging side, sustainability, understanding their concerns, their challenges, and what they go through to try to make something compostable or sustainable, recyclable, the products they need, the materials they need, which then has informed me now as CEO of SWANA. I joined in November of 2023. In terms of now this is the end of life, how can we work all together? So if there's new chemicals to create new packaging, right? Or new shapes of products, I want to make sure that we and our industry is ready for that because we need to take whatever there is, our industry needs to take it at. That's mattresses, that's cylinders, that's everything there is. Our industry is trying to figure out how to handle that appropriately for the future generations.
Well, Amy, you've been now at SWANA just over 15 months. And when you were at MCI, you worked with a number of associations, and then you were at SLA and you were at CBA. How do you immerse yourself in a profession or an industry so that you can be effective fast? Because it sounds like that's what you've been able to do. What tips do you have for association execs?
You're exactly right. Well, I'm the first female CEO of SWANA, as well as the first one not from industry.
Oh.
So that's always a leap of faith, I think, for any search committee, board of directors, choosing an association executive. And I fully believe you're an association executive, you can learn the industry. Doesn't matter the topic. And I've been very fortunate being at ASAE, learning about a plethora of associations there, and then going to MCI, and associations sometimes came in overnight because of the challenges they were facing. Sometimes it'd be longer lead time, 6 months. We could prepare more, get to know the people, get to know the industry. It just always depended, and you needed to get up to speed either way on that topic and that industry. And so some of the tips and tricks, certainly to talk to people. So whether that is the staff, the board members, volunteers, key stakeholders, want to make sure you're always including those exhibitors and sponsors' perspective in that as well. Very key to the organization. Right away, I'm always like, what industry publications, media, bloggers, podcasts can I start to consume and listen to? And I ask for a wide variety because I can do the podcast in the car or walking, not necessarily always something that's reading or at my desk. Or I actually still love magazines and print from my time at Association Media and Publishing. So that'll always be true to my heart. But I want a wide variety there, which is really key. Now, certainly, you want to ask for key association documents too, because that tells the story. So it's almost like when you're going through an audit, you're giving the minutes, you're giving the bylaws. That information can help you put the pieces together on where the organization has been. Now, certainly, you've heard some of that with the members and whatnot, but you also want to see like what was documented, what was written down. The fourth thing for me is I really jumped in with 2 feet. So you think about trash and recycling. We talked about you being in Alexandria, I'm in Fairfax. We put the trash out on the curb. All right, I come home, it's empty. I pull it back up to the spot it goes in, right? What happens? I didn't know. I had no idea the complexity of what happens once that is picked up. And I really needed to understand it. Hearing someone talk about it, okay, but I needed to visualize it. I needed to be on site. And so almost immediately I was touring in December. Actually, I toured a recycling facility. That was the first thing I went to. And then I did a waste to energy facility. And then I just kept going. I did over 30 site visits in the first year, different tours. And everywhere you go geographically is different. Some areas don't have curbside recycling. Residents have to bring that to a facility. So seeing how that works and understanding what that looks like. Just this week, I was visiting landfills up in New York State. They're covered with ice and snow. What are the nuances with that and those big trucks? I also didn't know that it's not just garbage trucks. Trash is also transported in semis. And so what does that look like? So really getting firsthand knowledge of it. And then I visited 14, 15 chapters in the first year. We have 47 chapters as part of SWANA. The goal is to get to all of them. I think it'll take about 3 to 5 years. Each one has its own unique values and own unique experiences, touches, and what they do, traditions. And getting to understand that has really been beneficial. They really framed that when I started as a listening tour and looked at it. It was in the strategic plan, like a listening tour. And I was like, we should always be doing this. So that is something I'm committed to doing as long as I'm in this role. And I think any position that I have as CEO, I would continue to do that. It's been invaluable for me. I can speak very fluently. I can ask intelligent questions. And every time I learn something, it's great.
Well, I think that's really very smart advice to get out there, meet the members, learn the issues, and do it continuously because the needs and circumstances will change. So let me turn to SWANA. I was intrigued by this notion of looking at documents. And speaking of documents, you just updated your strategic goals last year. So my guests talk a lot about, updating their strategic plans and their strategic goals. So tell us about the direction that SWANA is taking.
Yeah. So when I was interviewing for the job, I was handed the strategic plan from 2023 to 2027, long in my mind, especially for this industry and the technological advancements that are happening. I knew from the moment, I think we should change some of these.
Oh.
But of course, I just got hired. I'm new. How do you like the segue for that?
They also were new. I mean, you can't just change them. Maybe you can.
Yes, I am a change agent, but yeah.
Okay.
So the senior director of public policy and communications was also new at the time, and she was a member of SWANA, and she also worked for city government. And so we're looking at these and just kind of better language could position us better and how we talk about our organization and what that looks like. And so we started working on it and kind of taking it away. And I mentioned that I visited all those chapters. So when I would visit chapters, I would present the new language, right? And how I wanted to talk about SWANA. And I would still talk about the current goals of the strategic plan, but I would introduce, here's what we're doing going forward. So I was laying that groundwork. So what was great, by October, the board was like, okay, let's go with those 4 new goals, the new language. And the premise is the same, the purpose is the same, but the language is different. And the language is different because it's going to enable us to do more. It's going to strengthen our voice in this. So let me share a few of these as examples. So we have 4 main pillars. The first one, which was in the original strategic plan, was to get off the top 10 list of most dangerous jobs. Now, that is how it was worded. So you might be like, well, what does that mean? Well, this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They put together a report every year based on fatality data, and it covers occupations. So we're one of the occupations, and actually it's only the collectors. So the collectors, again, is the person coming to your curbside or commercial, picking up the trash.
Getting on and off the trucks, picking up the trash.
Getting on and off the truck, they might be riding the back of the truck. So as you can imagine, if you're visualizing that, those are probably a lot of transportation incidents because they're on the road.
They're crossing the street. People can't see them, right?
Yeah. And you see on a lot of days the arms that come up. And so someone may not even get out of the truck at your location, but that's not the case everywhere. So I always this is doom and gloom. I'm solution oriented. We need solutions, and we should talk about this in the positive. And how is this as a goal going to move us forward? Because it's also a goal that I don't have control over. It's based on data that is reported to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, based on birth certificates and death certificates and all these things, right, that go into this collection of information. So we morphed that into prioritizing safety.
Ah.
It's positive.
Yes.
We should prioritize safety. Every day people are out on the roads. And even if they're not out on the roads, they're on a landfill running a compactor or another truck, or they're in a recycling center, which is a huge machine that's running, or an anaerobic digester, or even composting, wood and stuff needs to go and be broken down. It's a very dangerous industry overall. It's not just the collectors. So we want to be inclusive of everyone there. And so prioritizing safety really enables us to put that at the forefront and to be solution oriented. I talked about our main audience, right, are those managers, supervisors, directors, and they're managing these individuals. Often they start their day with, let's talk about safety. I want you to be mindful of this today. So I'm sure this week, they were giving me safety tips. I'm walking on ice because you can't put rock salt down on a landfill because that could lead to other contamination issues. I'm sure that was talked about. We got to be careful in this section and that section, right? And so we want to keep safety really top of mind. We released this week as well a statement on product safety. So we often think about cardboard or our food waste or the containers that food comes in. But a huge challenge and safety concern are those hazardous materials. Gas cylinders, vapes, marine flares, batteries. And we want to really call together for collaboration the manufacturers, the producers. We want to bring the communities together. A lot of education happens is because consumers throw these items just in a regular recycling bin or in the trash. And most recently, we saw a video. It was a collection vehicle, the person standing in the back, throwing like a bag in, and an oxygen tank exploded.
Oh, God.
And it's the batteries. We've seen some stats that especially lithium-ion batteries and other batteries, which are found in so many things you don't even realize, even greeting cards, cause fires almost every day, whether that's on a landfill, whether that's in a recycling facility, whether that's in a truck. It's across the board. And so we really want to be that solution, that curator, bringing people together and finding those solutions. And it aligns, right, with our goal, prioritizing safety.
Well, Amy, let me ask you a question. So I'm a consumer and I fancy myself to be someone who's pretty educated about this. I'm also in the communications committee of my HOA, and we're constantly putting stuff in the newsletter about what you can recycle and not recycle. But who knows how many people are actually reading the newsletter and checking the City of Alexandria website. So who's responsible for educating people in the communities about these safety issues? And does SWANA have a role here?
SWANA has a big role there with the recycling and then certainly these hazardous materials, especially batteries. Since we've been here, we have launched lithium-ion battery working groups with our members that are focusing on like advocacy, but also education with the communities. And what we're trying to do is pull people together, pull the resources together that maybe Alexandria has, right? Maybe Fairfax has, but maybe someone in another state or province doesn't have. And they're trying to think about how to educate or what to do. And so we do see it as the role of the government, of the community, or perhaps it is of the private side, right? Because if they really are doing a majority of the servicing in that area, what are they putting out to their members? So my mother is in the town of Amherst, and town of Amherst does outsource that, and she's got it up on her bulletin board, like what she can recycle and what not recycle. But I think the point is it needs to be a collaborative effort and a team effort. And then we need to think about the producers. I do have 2 children. I often look, especially when we get something with a compressed battery, so meaning you can't see the battery, or maybe you don't even see, there's something in there that's making it beep, right? But you can't see the battery and you can't take it out. What does it say for recycling? And that is confusing to the consumer as well, what to do. So how can we make that easier? Those chasing arrows are often on some of these electronics because, yes, batteries can be recycled, but they can't be recycled at curbside. They need to go to another step. So whether that is taking them to a specific bin, like it is a hazardous waste actually center where you're dropping these items off, which I have visited those as well. And I've seen the public come through and you open your trunk or your door, someone takes the items out. It's like really simple, less than like a minute to do this, but it's also changing behavior or what you think you could do just at your curb. It's changing that.
Wow. Well, Amy, let's turn back to SWANA. How's membership?
We are on an uptick, so I'm very excited about that.
Congratulations. Yay.
Thank you. It's really important. And I think a lot of things have stemmed to that. Greater communication, our ability to tell the story and what we're doing. We've enhanced the benefit and really the value over the past year. And there were some benefits, that were there that I was like, we need to shout those from the rooftops. Why aren't we telling more people about this? So I think that has really helped. In addition to that, our 47 chapters, they're separately incorporated, and we've really tried to strengthen the relationship between us and them. We've always had relationships, right? But you want a strong one, and you want it to be collaborative and a partnership. And so we have been increasing our communications to them. Everyone on the board gets an email from me about once a month of important updates, what's going on. And we've also tried to provide some greater resources to them to be a greater ambassador, an enhanced ambassador, to help us recruit and retain, make it easier for them. They're mostly volunteers. We do have several chapters that may have an administrator, right, or their own executive director, but in many cases, they're relying on volunteers. And you volunteer, I volunteer. We want to make that as easy as possible for them. So we've increased a lot of that to make them stronger ambassadors for us.
Well, during the prep, we talked about the importance of trust and how you've been working hard during your tenure as CEO to really increase trust. And in fact, you attended the PricewaterhouseCoopers Trust Institute. Trust is a big deal to you. Talk to us about trust.
Trust is huge for me. And I talked about this in the interview. And it's so hard in the interview because you only know so much, right? But my sense at the time was they had a trust issue.
This is the interview with the board when they were hiring you.
Yeah. And we give people trust immediately. Like we give people trust on the road, when we go to a restaurant, new friends we meet, new people we meet, that people are good natured. We're going to trust them. We have no choice. And when something falters, that trust can be gone in a second. The trust is gone in a second, and then it takes X amount of time to get it back. You don't know that person. You don't know how willing they'll give it back to you. And that's what my sense was here. And when I started to peel back the onion and start talking to people, I was like, okay, this is confirmed. We've lost a lot of trust in all key stakeholders. So even the board, even, exhibitors, sponsors, members, volunteers, chapters. And it's not one reason. It depends on their situation and how they were interacting with the organization. So take an exhibitor. Maybe they didn't get the ROI. They didn't get the value. Maybe for a member, they didn't get a call back to renew or an email back. Maybe an attendee at a conference just didn't get that TLC feeling and that warm feeling.
That's everything, though.
Everything. And maybe one common thread with all of that, with the lack of trust, was giving feedback and not feeling that they were heard or listened to. So I mentioned that listening tour. That is why that was specifically in the strategic plan, like before I got here. So they might not have called it trust. They knew they had to listen more, but you can listen all you want. It's the action and how you drive results and how you drive forward. So I, by nature, am a stronger listener. I'm not the first to raise my hand in a meeting, a little more introverted, and people listening to this, or you might be surprised by that. But I am a strong listener. And then I'm thinking about, as I'm listening, what is the solution? How can I drive this forward? Or what is that next step, even if it is a small step, to invoke some change? And that was really key with rebuilding the trust. So with the exhibitors and sponsors, I had the opportunity with that 2 events in 2024 to really show we're listening. We're going to do different things. We're going to bring better value. We're going to deliver on attendees and qualified attendees, have that hall feel bustling, right? And other opportunities that they had been asking for. We did it. We customized things. We did everything along those lines. Members related to customer service, we really tried to put more focus on automation, making sure as simple as the phones being covered during business hours. We do have 10% of our membership in California. I don't know the stat in terms of Mountain Time and Central Time, but we need to be available. We've also enhanced our communication. And with communication, or even rolling out new programs, or even a new way of doing things, it's about being intentional and focused and explaining what we're doing. And that was really key to rebuilding it. And I've had many people say to me, I have a lot to tell you about SWANA and my experience.
And you were willing to listen.
And they're like, I don't know if you want to hear it. And I say, tell me, I need to know. If I don't know, I can't make any changes. Tell me. That happened even this week. And I love it because they're kind of like, you're willing to hear this? Oh, yeah. Tell me what happened. Tell me what set you off or left that bad taste in your mouth, why you're not going to, volunteer with us. We need volunteers. Let me know what that is. We can make some changes there. So it's been great. 15 months, I've seen a lot of positive change, but that's because we've been driving results too.
Speaking of exhibitors and sponsors, you've been redeveloping your event strategy. Man, I know that my listeners are going to want to hear about this. What are you doing differently?
So when I came in, again, in the interview process, I had heard and I had several questions about events. What would I do? Thoughts on like hybrid, thoughts on virtual. And at the time, they had 2 events. One was called SOAR, and that was in the springtime. The second event was called WasteCon, and that was in the fall. And so I started to unpack what these events were about, trying to figure out what the unique value was between the 2 that we were being offered. Both had content, concurrent sessions, and both had trade shows. So, of course, one of my first questions is, where does the content focus? So SOAR focused on technical content. We have engineers, we got a lot of technical expertise, we got things we got to do. And WasteCon at the time was focusing more on like motivational, leadership, inspirational. But in the past, WasteCon had focused and it had technical sessions. That's a very key point. I'll loop back to that. So then I started asking, tell me about the trade show, the exhibit hall, like what's the difference there? No difference. So it's not like one focused on technology, right? Or maybe one focused on trucks and equipment. Nope, they were the same. So then I started looking at like the attendee demographics and who was attending. And if WasteCon is supposed to be leadership, is that give the perception that's a decision maker? So were there more decision makers going to that one?
More senior staff, right?
But then this is the technical one. And a lot of technical could still be a leadership person and they could still be a decision maker. So then what was the overlap in exhibitors and sponsors between the 2 events? Well, then I realized they were really becoming more regional events.
Oh, interesting. So similar type people, but based on geography.
Yes. And the market perception was confusing. People didn't understand. So I called it SOAR. I can't tell you what SOAR stands for. It's that confusing. But SOAR is an acronym for 4 words. It's not a saying. It's not like an easy thing that rolls off your tongue. So people were like, what is this? And then for WasteCon, it used to have the technical content. People might have been like, oh, it's near where I live, where I work, or I have another meeting, I'm going to go to it. And they thought there'd be technical content and there wasn't. Because the organization hadn't told that story well, that event had changed. So complete market misperceptions, all these things going on. So in November, I was on a meeting and we were going to move forward and keep booking meetings as we always have. And I said, whoa, we're not doing this. We're changing this up. And SOAR was booked already for 2025, and it was supposed to be in April in Columbus, Ohio. I said, call them. Let's get this moved to the fall.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And the staff's like, oh, okay, yeah. Well, guess what? Columbus was so gracious. They found other dates to move it to the fall, November 12th through the 15th. Awesome. That was the first piece, right? In like figuring out this new story. And then it was like, we're going to move to one conference once I had those dates.
Oh, so you've canceled or sunsetted WasteCon.
And SOAR.
And SOAR.
The whole branding, the marketing, those 2 events no longer exist because it's too hard to change what's in their mind about an event and what they thought it was and what they used to experience. Much easier to create a new event.
Wow. And then people are paying attention because it's new and they don't have any preconceived notions about what this new conference is.
Yes.
Brilliant.
So got board approval in February of 24 to go forward with one conference. We had the dates, we had the location, no name. And so I'm out and about at all these chapter events, like we're having this new event and I'm rolling it out, but no name yet. And so in June, there was lots of selling of like the one event until June. The board of directors had a meeting and we started brainstorming names. And the board was like, we came up with some names, okay? But they were like, we're not the experts in this. There was like 1 or 2 marketing people on the board. And so we then brought in a young professionals focus group. And we gave them, not at the beginning, but we did introduce some of the names that they had. And actually, the name of the conference came from young professionals.
Oh.
But we had another step in there because I mentioned earlier, like the story of SWANA, increased communication, and this trust factor, right? So we're building a new event. I need trust from the beginning. So if trust is lacking overall with SWANA, how do you bring trust into a new event and get people on board right away? So we crowdsourced the name. We put 3 names out and we did a ranking because I didn't want people just to vote on one name. I actually wanted to know their thought process on 3 names. And then they had an open space. They could put in whatever they wanted. We got some fun names, which I think we'll roll out for some other things later on.
Right.
Lots of fun names. And so from there, we chose the name, and that name is ARCON.
Oh, and what does R stand for?
So the R stands for resource management. So the mission, moving waste to resource, the R stands for that. And when we talk about resources, it's recycling, reuse, refill. It's finding like those new purposes.
Oh, that is great.
And the repurposing, it could be landfill gas into compressed natural gas, converting the waste to energy, putting energy on the grid, powering homes. And all this prompted that move to ARCON. So instead of focusing on the waste, let's talk about on the resource and what we're trying to do for the environment and those future generations to come. We really want to remain relevant. That's another R word.
Wow.
And we wanted to really expand from like those traditional views of waste management. You know, we're a resource. We're really trying to think beyond what people think of traditionally in the past of just putting stuff in the ground. So we're having fun with what the R is. It could be reinventing.
You can give it different themes each year.
Different themes each year. And so our logo shows an R and it's a variety of colors to do the circularity of our industry. And this event is really going to help us like live that mission. That's what we do as association executives. Everything we do is supposed to go back to that mission. And this event is really going to be that signature piece that truly does that. And the tagline is that ARCON will be the place where waste and resource management professionals come to think. Why we came up with that is because that's what conferences do. It's a break. It's an opportunity where you can go and think maybe something that can help you tomorrow, or maybe something 3 years down the line that you'll be able to implement, right? And we want that wide variety there. So it's been very well received. We announced it in October of 2024 to the members at WasteCon at the general session. We made a big splash. We had fireworks on stage. We had about 30 volunteers that came from backstage out with T-shirts and water bottles and pens and stickers, and really just tried to make a big splash and excitement over that new name and what this conference was going to stand for. And we've continued that through now. We've had focus groups since January to find out more about what they want the experience to be. I would say SWANA was holding an event before, and now we're going to hold an experience.
Wow.
And what does that look like for every facet of attendee, all different type of attendees? So soon we'll have those pieces and then the schedule and be ready to move forward.
Well, I'm going to have you back so you can tell us about the new experience.
Yeah, we're building it from scratch. I keep saying it's a clean slate. And on those focus groups, I said, please don't do a debrief of past events. We want to go future focused. And we're looking at it that everyone's a first timer.
We got to have you back next year because I'm sure SWANA is going to be a completely different organization and it'll be fun to check back in. Thank you for today. This was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Associations Thrive. We're so glad to have you here. You know, my personal mission and the mission of my company, Matrix Group International, is to help associations and nonprofits increase membership, generate revenue, and thrive in the digital space. I want to hear stories of how your organization is thriving in today's challenging landscape. Please apply to be on my show by going to podcast.matrixgroup.net. By the way, do you need help with a digital initiative? Maybe it's a website redesign, a new membership database, or a hybrid meeting that you're planning. I'd love to connect with you. Please visit the Matrix Group website at matrixgroup.net. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of Associations Thrive. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating, post a comment, and share it with your colleagues and friends. Bye!